Tell me the difference between the kid who was originally on set, cleaning out barns, not asking the right questions, to the man you are today.
Wow. This is introspective stuff. Um, well, I would say there's good and bad. The kid that was 15-year-old, 16-year-old Clint that was, on set as a PA, there was certainly an eagerness to that kid, that maybe you lose along the way as you get older. So for me now, I'd like to kind of recapture some of that eagerness that I had, that enthusiasm, because whether it's just your day to day or the world in general, I mean, things can kind of beat you down a little bit, and so you gotta find ways to stay enthusiastic about what you're doing.
Yeah.
So in a way, yeah, I look back to my 16-year-old self and I say, yeah, I need to kind of recapture that, but I would also say the Clint that is sitting here now is someone who has learned humility over the years, in the sense that when I was a kid, I may have thought that I knew everything, so I was afraid to ask the dumb questions.
Yeah.
Now I'm in my 40s and I'm asking so many dumb questions, because there's a level of humility you have to learn that, we're not there yet, and I'm not done learning. And places like Film Riot and other YouTube channels, I'm constantly looking at people on YouTube and learning from people a lot younger than myself on how to do things. So stay hungry, stay enthusiastic, stay eager, but always be willing to learn. Well, my name is Clint Till, and I am a filmmaker. I am in Memphis, Tennessee, and I work full-time in video production. I've been in video production for 20 plus years, and on the side, I write and direct and edit short film projects.
Yeah, and I, as a matter of fact, I didn't know you had a YouTube channel. I saw Big and Tall through, I think, the Memphis community on Facebook.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Right. And so I watched it embedded, not knowing you had a YouTube channel, and then later on finding out that you had a lot of good information there.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you saying that, because I have been blogging probably since 2005 on the topic of video production and marketing and movies and just kind of whatever. And then, when the pandemic hit and, I was stuck at home for a while, a friend of mine had suggested, man, you got all this material written down on your blog going back years. Have you ever thought about, translating that into a YouTube channel to kind of use some of that same material? And I said, I don't know. I mean, I'm always used to being behind the camera, instead of putting myself out there in front. And so I gave it a shot last year, when we were all locked down, to try and offer some people that are maybe, in video marketing, how do you work with a video production company? What are the right questions to ask? The hows and the whys of it all. And so I started putting some of that on my YouTube channel.
Okay. Well, I think the $1 million question in filmmaking, and I'm saying that facetiously, but the key words, or the most searched for thing, I think, in filmmaking is how to get the cinematic look.
Oh, right.
And then it also comes down to whether or not you need a quality camera or not quality, but a good camera versus a cheap camera.
Sure.
So what are your thoughts on being able to achieve the cinematic look with a cheap camera versus a pro camera?
Yeah, when you had, a long time ago, when you were still shooting digitally on like mini DV tape or beta or whatever, and you had fixed lenses and you didn't really have a whole, and you had small, sensor sizes, really small, you had to kind of cheat the cinematic look. They always said shallow depth of field.
Yeah.
And if you didn't have the right lens adapters back then, I mean, you had to kind of cheat it. You'd have to, go with a wide aperture, bring your camera way back, zoom all the way in, and you'd have to really kind of think about how you're going to stage everything to really get a shallow depth of field look. But of course, when Canon came out with the Mark I and everything, that just kind of changed the ball game when it comes to the cinematic look. But really, and people have asked me before, hey, what's the best camera? What camera have you used on your short films? And everyone always says, the best camera is the one that you have with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's true, because a lot of it is less about the camera and so much more about the composition and the lighting. making sure that you understand that just because you have an expensive camera, you can't just set it up out of the box and shoot something and have it look the way the cinematic look, so to speak.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes with it comes with knowing the craft and knowing how to light and stage and block and move the camera to get that look.
Where do you think, and this is just a very, very, very open-ended question, where do you think we are now as far as movies go? Are they all alike, or are they some different, or are they just following a formula?
I think that depends on the budget level and that you're speaking of. So for example, I think, I can't speak too much about, big studios and big Hollywood productions because I've never been at that level.
Okay.
But there is something to be said about mega conglomerates that are kind of controlling studios today, where you do seem to get the same types of stories again and again because they're looking for that home run multi-million dollar film, and so you see that's at that level, they're less willing to take risks, on new ideas and new filmmakers. But then you have a place like A24 that just cranks out so many great films that feel fresh, but no, I think the democratization of filmmaking, is unprecedented. I think with everything that's available, like you mentioned, the smartphones, people just have a camera in their pocket and they're ready to go and put something together. So I think there's so much more experimentation going on, but I would say for those that are student filmmakers or starting out or trying to learn, and you're first getting those short films into festivals, like I said earlier, my experience was that my films really weren't standing out because there's a lot of similar tonality to a lot of the films you see in film festivals, similar subject matters and things like that. So it took me several years to kind of figure that out. But once I did, like Big and Tall and Hangry really have gained a lot more traction on the film festival circuit than any of my other films ever did. And I think a lot of it is because I kind of found something that was true to me, and I think when you find something that's true to you and who you are and the stories you want to tell, then that'll really kind of help you find that unique voice and kind of where you fit, Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you'll be able to pinpoint this question, but do you know right now what you need to improve on as a filmmaker, or I guess to kind of, shape that question, maybe it's just things that you are working on as a filmmaker?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, from a writer standpoint, I want to be able to write dialogue better. Now that's why with Hangry, that's a 7.5 minute short, that's all in a dining room at a nursing home.
Yes.
It's a comedy about a retired reverend who doesn't get the lunch he thinks he deserves and angles for that better lunch. And so that's a 7.5 minute short that's really two characters at a table talking at one another. So whereas Big and Tall was a little more spacious and we were out there in the woods and it was more visual and what the characters were doing and everything, Hangry, I wanted to kind of reverse that and really kind of challenge myself to write something smaller that was more dialogue heavy, to try and get better at writing dialogue. So that would be one thing I want to get better at, is writing dialogue.